Welcome to Hearths of Myths. Tonight, the fire burns low, and the shadows in the corners of the room seem to stretch just a little further than usual. Outside, the wind may be howling, or perhaps the night is still, holding its breath. It does not matter where you are. What matters is where we are going. We are traveling back to a time when the earth was thin, when the boundaries between the world of the living and the world of the spirits were as fragile as a spider's web in a gale. We are going to the ancient emerald heart of Ireland, but not to its sunlit glens or its singing rivers. We are going to the dark, damp throat of the earth itself. We are going to face a creature born of chaos, a horror that required the iron will of a poet-warrior to silence. We are speaking of the terror that came from the cave of Cruachan. We are speaking of Ellén Trechend. Close your eyes. Let the modern world dissolve. Let the concrete and the steel fade away, replaced by the smell of wet peat, the scent of burning oak, and the metallic tang of mist clinging to the heather. To understand the monster, one must first understand the womb that bore it. In the ancient geography of Ireland, there are places that act as anchors, heavy stones that hold the mythology of the land in place. Tara is the seat of kingship. Oweynagat is the seat of warriors. But Rathcroghan is the seat of magic. Located in the western province of Connacht, in the county of Rathcroghan, it is a vast, enigmatic landscape of earthworks and burial mounds. To the uninitiated eye, walking across these fields today, it might look like nothing more than a series of strange, grassy humps rising from the flat farmland. But to the ancients, this was the capital of Queen Medb. This was the assembly place of the hosts, and, more ominously, this was the location of the Oweynagat. The Oweynagat. In the Irish tongue, it means the cave of the cats, but do not let the name fool you into thinking of domestic felines purring by the hearth. These cats were the fairy creatures of the other world, beasts that could tear the throat out of a warrior before he could draw his sword. But the cave was more than just a den for wild animals. It was known, universally and fearfully, as the Hell's Gate of Ireland. It was a physical, tangible entrance to the Sídhe, the underground realm of the spirits and the gods. Imagine standing before it. It is not a grand, gaping maw like the entrance to a dragon's lair in a high fantasy tale. It is disturbingly subtle. It is a slit in the earth, hidden beneath the roots of an ancient thorn tree, obscured by overgrown briars and nettles. To enter it, you must lower yourself. You must bow down to the earth. You must humble yourself before the darkness. The entrance is marked by a lintel stone, a heavy slab of limestone carved with Ogham script, the ancient alphabet of lines and notches. It reads, Cath Maige Mucrama, Phraach, son of Medb. A tomb marker. A warning. It tells you that you are crossing a threshold from which even the sons of queens do not easily return. The air around the cave is always colder than the surrounding fields. Even in the height of summer, when the sun warms the limestone of the burren and the cattle graze lazily in the heat, a draught of icy air bleeds from the mouth of Oweynagat. It smells of wet limestone, of ancient mud, and of something else, something metallic and stale, like blood that has dried on iron. This is the breath of the underworld. Our story begins not with the creature itself, but with the season that summons it. It is Samhain, the time we now call Halloween, but which, to the ancient Celts, was the turning of the year. It was the beginning of winter, the season of darkness. The harvest was in. The cattle were brought down from the summer pastures. The fires in the hearths were extinguished and relit. It was a time of immense danger. On the night of Samhain, the barriers between our world and the other world dissolved. The veil was lifted. And on this specific night, the Oweynagat was not just a cave, it was an open door. The people of Connacht knew to stay indoors on Samhain. They bolted their doors. They scattered salt on the thresholds. They offered food to the spirits, not out of love, but out of a desperate need for appeasement. They knew that on this night, the residents of the cave would emerge. The primary texts, the Din Shenchas, the lore of places, tell us that the Oweynagat was a place of testing. Warriors who wished to prove their bravery would descend into its depths. But it was not a place of treasure. It was a place of psychological and physical horror. The cave system itself is a natural limestone fissure, narrow, wet, and suffocatingly tight. It twists and turns, disorienting the traveler, stripping them of their sense of direction, their sense of time, and eventually their sense of self. But in the era of the High Kings, the danger was not just getting lost. The danger was what came out. The cave had a history of birthing plagues. Before Ellén Trechend, there were the birds. A flock of crimson birds, red as spilled blood, had emerged from the cave in the days of legend. Their breath was a pestilence. They did not sing, they withered. Where they flew, the leaves fell from the trees, the grass turned brown and died, and the cattle sickened. They were the anti-nature, the inverse of life. Then there were the pigs of the cave, magical boars that could not be counted, for they shifted and shimmered, and whoever tried to hunt them vanished into the mist. The Oweynagat was the womb of monsters. It was the subconscious of the land made manifest, vomiting forth its nightmares to test the sovereignty of the king. And now, the stars are aligning for the greatest nightmare of all. The era is the cycle of the kings, specifically leading up to the events of the Battle of Maige Mucrama. But before the battle of men, there must be the battle of the cosmos. The landscape of Rathcroghan is silent on this particular Samhain eve. The wind is low, rustling the dry reeds in the winter fields. The great mounds, the burial places of ancient chieftains, stand as silent sentinels against the violet sky. The sun has dipped below the horizon, leaving a bruise of dark blue and indigo in the west. The first frost is forming on the blades of grass, turning the emerald fields into a shimmering silver sea. Deep within the earth, beneath the lintel stone, in the lightless, airless dark of the limestone veins, something is stirring. It is not a bird. It is not a pig. It is something ancient, something that has been growing in the dark, feeding on the fear and the magic of the subterranean realm. The earth vibrates. It is a subtle tremor at first, barely noticeable, a ripple in a cup of water, a slight shifting of dust on a shelf. But then it grows. It is a rhythmic thrumming, like a heartbeat, but slow and massive. Thump, thump, thump. The animals feel it first. In the barns and byres of Connacht, the horses roll their eyes, showing the whites of panic. The dogs whimper and hide beneath the tables. The birds in the trees fall silent, their heads tucked under their wings, frozen in instinctual terror. They know the vibration. It is the frequency of a predator that has no natural enemy. At the mouth of the cave, the brambles begin to twitch. The cold air rushing out intensifies, becoming a gale. It blows the dead leaves away from the entrance, clearing the path. The darkness inside the cave seems to thicken, to pulse, to push outward against the twilight. This is the birth canal of doom, and what is coming is the Ellén Trechend. The name itself is a riddle and a description. Ellén is an obscure word, often interpreted as a swarm, a multitude, or a monster. Trechend is clear, three-headed, the three-headed monster. But to simply call it a monster is to diminish it. In the Celtic mind, 3 is a sacred number, the triple goddess, the 3 realms of earth, sea, and sky. To have a 3-headed creature is to have a perversion of that sacred triad. It is a chaotic unity. It represents a threat to all 3 realms simultaneously. The creature that is climbing up the slick, wet limestone walls of the inner cave is a chimera of nightmare. It is not a Greek hydra. It is something far more primal, born of the bog and the rock. Let us envision the emergence. A claw, massive and scaled, hooks over the edge of the limestone lintel. It is the color of old copper, green with oxidation and age. The claws are iron-hard, scratching deep grooves into the ancient rock. The sound of stone grinding against stone echoes across the silent fields, a sound like a tomb lid being dragged open. Then the heads appear. The first head is that of a bird, a vulture-like construction of beak and malice, but magnified to the size of a bull. Its eyes are beads of black glass, unblinking, seeing everything. It represents the sky, but a sky that has turned hostile. The second head is something more mammalian, perhaps lupine or feline, with jaws capable of crushing the femur of a horse. It is covered in matted fur the color of dried peat. It represents the land, the wild, untamable earth that seeks to reclaim civilization. The third head is the most terrifying. It is serpentine, reptilian, with eyes that glow with a cold, pale light, like the phosphorescence of decaying wood. It drips venom that hisses when it touches the frost-covered grass. It represents the underworld, the dark waters, the hidden secrets that rot the soul. They are all attached to a single, massive body, a bulk of muscle and scale that heaves itself out of the narrow aperture of the cave. It seems impossible that such a mass could fit through such a small opening, but the creatures of the Sídhe do not obey the laws of physics. They are fluid. They are made of shadow and intent as much as flesh and bone. The Ellén Trechend stands on the mound of Rathcroghan. It shakes its massive form, sending a spray of cave slime and grave dirt into the air. The 3 heads lift to the moonless sky and let out a sound. It is not a roar. It is a dissonant chord of terror. The bird head screeches, a high-pitched tear in the fabric of the air. The beast head howls, a guttural rumble that shakes the ground. The snake head hisses, a sound like steam escaping a fissure. Together, they create a harmony of dread that wakes every sleeper in the province. This is the beginning of the scourge. The creature does not immediately rampage. It is intelligent. It is a creature of the other world, and it has a purpose. It looks out over the ordered fields of the humans, the neat hedgerows, the cattle pens, the thatched roofs of the ring forts. It sees order, and it hates it. In the cosmology of the ancient Irish, the king was responsible for the fertility of the land. If the king was just, the harvest was good, the weather was mild, and the wolves stayed in the forest. This was the truth of the king. But the emergence of Ellén Trechend is a sign that the balance is broken. It is a manifestation of the falsehood, the chaos that creeps in when the sovereignty is weak or challenged. The monster begins to move. It does not run, it stalks. It moves with a terrifying fluidity, flowing over the landscape like a landslide. Where its feet touch the grass, the green fades to gray. The frost turns to black slush. The first settlement it reaches is a small ring fort, a rath, home to a prosperous farmer and his extended family. The wooden palisade, built to keep out wolves and cattle raiders, is nothing to the Ellén Trechend. The creature simply steps over it. The silence of the night is shattered by the breaking of wood. The roof of the main roundhouse is torn away by the bird head, exposing the terrified family inside to the cold night air. The beast head snaps at the cattle in the enclosure, not to eat, but to kill. It is slaughter for the sake of slaughter. The snakehead breathes a cloud of vapor into the house. There are no screams, for the vapor steals the breath. It steals the voice. The family dies in silence, their lungs filled with the dust of the grave. This is the true horror of Ellén Trechend. It is not just a physical threat. It is a silencer. It unmakes the world. It turns the vibrant, noisy, living world of the Irish clans into a silent graveyard. By morning, the ring fort is a ruin. The bodies are untouched, but life has been drained from them. The cattle lie dead in the mud. The fires are out, and the monster has moved on. News travels slow in the ancient world, but fear travels fast. As the sun rises, a pale, watery sun that gives no warmth, rumors begin to spread. Shepherds returning from the hills speak of a shadow that blocked out the stars. Travelers speak of a smell on the wind, a stench of sulfur and rot. And at the royal seat, at the great hall of the kings, the mood shifts from celebration to anxiety. The druids, the wise men who watch the signs, cast their yew wands. They read the flight of birds. They look into the flames, and they see only darkness. They know what has happened. The Oweynagat has opened. The gate has been breached. The guardian of the Sídhe has failed, or perhaps the Sídhe have sent a punishment. But why? Why now? The mythology hints at a time of turmoil. The high kingship is contested. There are rivalries between the provinces. The land is groaning under the weight of ambition and war. The Ellén Trechend is the physical manifestation of this internal rot. It is the karma of the nation come to collect its due. As the days turn into weeks, the devastation spreads. The monster does not stay in one place. It roams the province of Connacht and then moves outward. It strikes at the heart of the economy, the cattle. In ancient Ireland, cattle were wealth. They were currency. To destroy the herds was to bankrupt the kingdom. The Ellén Trechend glides through the pastures, leaving trails of dead livestock. It poisons the water sources. Wells turn brackish and foul. Streams run black. The land itself seems to be rejecting the presence of humans. And all the while, the creature grows. With every life it snuffs out, with every fire it extinguishes, It seems to become more solid, more invincible. Its scales harden into armor that no spear can pierce. Its heads grow more distinct, more intelligent. It is learning the ways of men. It is learning that they are weak, that they are scattered, that they are afraid. The warriors of Connacht, the brave men who sing songs of their own glory in the mead halls, try to stop it. They form war bands. They sharpen their spears and polish their shields. They ride out with hounds and horns, treating the beast as if it were a large wolf or a bear. They do not return. Finding their remains is a grim task. A shattered shield here, a bent spear there, a helmet crushed flat as if by a giant hammer. The Ellén Trechend does not fight duels. It does not engage in honorable combat. It is a force of nature. Fighting it is like fighting a hurricane with a sword. It simply overwhelms. The people begin to despair. They abandon their farms. They flock to the larger fortresses, huddling together behind stone walls, praying to gods that seem to have gone silent. The smoke of the cooking fires no longer rises from the countryside. The fields are left untilled. The crops rot in the ground. The silence of Ellén Trechend is falling over Ireland. But in the darkness, there is always a flicker of light. In the despair, there is always the seed of a hero. But this hero is not a king. He is not a prince born in a silk bed. He is a man of the forge, a man of iron and fire, a man who understands that to fight a monster of the earth, one must use the bones of the earth. Far away from the devastation, in a smithy filled with the heat of the kiln and the ringing of the anvil, a man named Amergin is working. He does not know it yet, but his destiny is walking towards him on 3 sets of legs. He is the poet-smith, the one who can shape metal and shape words. And in the Celtic world, these are the 2 most powerful magics of all. But for now, Amergin is just a rumor. For now, the stage belongs to the monster. Let us return to the cave, to the Oweynagat. Even though the monster has left, the cave is still active. It is an open wound in the earth. The energy that released the Ellén Trechend is still pouring out, corrupting the land around Rathcroghan. The grass has turned a sickly yellow. The trees are twisted into agony shapes. The air is heavy with static. This place, this Cruachan, is the epicenter. It is the point of infection. And it is here that the final confrontation must eventually take place. The monster was born here, and the logic of myth dictates that it must return here or be unmade here. The ancient Irish scribes, recording these events in the Labor Gabala Érenn, the Book of Invasions, and the Din Shenchas, treat the Ellén Trechend with a strange mix of horror and reverence. They describe it as a plague. They link it to the destruction of the great capital of Tara in later years. It is a recurring motif of disaster. But in this specific saga, the creature is singular. It is the Ellén Trechend, the 3-headed one. Imagine the nights in Connacht during this reign of terror. The sun sets early, and the darkness is absolute. There is no moon, for the clouds are thick and heavy with snow that refuses to fall. The wind whistles through the cracks in the walls. Every creak of the timber, every rustle of the thatch, sends a jolt of adrenaline through the hearts of the people inside. They listen for the dissonant chord, the screech, the howl, the hiss. and when they hear it, distant at first, rolling over the hills like thunder, they hug their children tighter. They cover their ears. They pray that the monster will pass them by. They pray that it will find another victim tonight. Because when the Ellén Trechend comes, it does not knock. It enters as a wind of death. It enters as the realization that the walls we build to keep out the wild are nothing but straw against the ancient, hungry dark. The terror of Cruachan is awake, and Ireland is holding its breath. For the Ellén Trechend did not come alone. It is the apex predator, but it brought its own ecosystem with it. The darkness is deepening. The fire is burning low, but we must keep watching. We must keep listening, for the story is only just beginning. If you were to stand at the mouth of the Oweynagat today, amidst the quiet grazing of sheep and the gentle rustle of the hawthorn trees, you might be tempted to think of it as a geological curiosity, a hole in the ground, carved by water and time, innocent of intent. But the memory of the land is longer than the memory of stone. The earth remembers what has passed through that throat. The soil retains the vibrations of the things that have clawed their way up from the dark. And before the triple-headed terror cast its shadow over the province of Connacht, there were others. There were precursors. To understand the magnitude of the Ellén Trechend, we must understand the ecology of the hell from which it spawned. A monster of that size, of that complexity, does not simply manifest in a vacuum. It is the apex predator of an entire ecosystem of nightmares. And for generations before the Great Devastation, the Oweynagat had been leaking. It had been dripping poison into the reality of Ireland, testing the boundaries, probing the defenses of the mortal world with lesser, though no less terrifying horrors. Let us turn our gaze back, before the three heads rose, to the time of the birds. They were known in the whispers of the Druids as the birds of the cave. But to the common folk, the farmers who watched their crops wither and their children sicken, they were the Crimson Scourge. The texts tell us they emerged on a morning that should have been bright with spring, but was instead choked with a heavy, unnatural fog. They did not come as a flock of sparrows or starlings, chaotic and noisy. They came with a military precision, a red cloud that moved as a single organism. These were not birds of feather and bone as we know them. Their plumage was the color of fresh arterial blood, a red so deep and wet that it seemed to glisten even without the sun. When they flew, the sound was not the soft whistling of wind through feathers. It was the sound of dry parchment tearing. It was a rustling, whispering sound, like thousands of dead leaves skittering across a stone floor. But it was not their appearance that terrified the ancients. It was their breath. The mythology is specific and chilling on this detail. The breath of the birds of Oweynagat was a pestilence. Where they flew, the air turned sour. Imagine a vineyard where the grapes simply shrivel on the vine as a shadow passes over them. Imagine a field of golden wheat, standing proud and tall, suddenly turning gray and brittle, collapsing into dust as if aged 100 years in a single second. This was the gift of the crimson flock. They were anti-life. They were creatures of the entropy that dwells in the deep earth, brought to the surface to accelerate the decay of the world. They would descend upon the trees of the sacred groves, the oaks and the yews that were the lungs of the land. They would perch on the branches, thousands of them, their red bodies covering the wood like a living moss of blood. And the trees would die, The bark would split, the leaves would fall, black and curled. The sap would dry up. In their wake, they left a landscape of skeletons, a gray and silent world where nothing grew and nothing moved. The warriors of the Red Branch, the heroes of Ulster, who often found themselves in conflict with the forces of Connacht, knew of these birds. It is said that even the great Cruachan, the Hound of Ulster, the demigod warrior whose rage could boil water, found his sling stones useless against them. For how do you fight a cloud? How do you fight a living miasma that poisons the air you breathe? You can strike down 1 bird, or 10, or 100, but the flock remains. The sickness remains. The birds were a psychological terror. They represented the fragility of agriculture, the terrifying realization that the harvest, the very basis of civilization, could be wiped out by forces beyond human control. They were the first warning shot from the Oweynagat. They were the signal that the womb of the earth had turned cancerous. But the cave had more to offer than death from above. It also held the madness of the earth. After the birds, or perhaps during the intervals of their plagues, came the swine, the pigs of Cruachan. In the Celtic world, the pig is a complex symbol. It is a source of food, a symbol of feasting and plenty. But it is also a creature of the earth, a rooter in the mud, associated with the underworld and the consumption of the dead. The pigs that emerged from Oweynagat were not the domesticated animals of the farmyard. They were the Sídhe, the fairy pigs. They were described as having bristles of hard wire, tusks that could shear through iron, and eyes that burned with a pale green fire. But their true weapon was not their tusks. It was their unreality. The legends tell of the frustration of the kings of Connacht, particularly Ailill and Medb, the rulers of this haunted land. They would see the pigs grazing in the fields, massive, fat, promising a feast for the entire kingdom. The hunters would ride out, spears ready, hounds baying. They would surround the herd. They would count them. "There are 7, one hunter would say. "No," another would reply. "There are 7 times 7. "You are blind," a third would cry. "There is but 1 boar, large as a hill." This was the curse of the pigs of Cruachan. They could not be counted. They shifted. They blurred. They defied the order of mathematics and logic. To try to count them was to invite madness. The human mind craves structure. It craves the ability to quantify the world. 1 cow, 2 sheep, 3 horses. But the chaotic magic of the cave dissolved this structure. The hunters who chased these pigs often did not return, or if they did, they came back changed. They would be found wandering in the bogs, speaking in tongues, their minds broken by the attempt to impose order on pure chaos. And wherever these pigs rooted, the land became sterile. They did not fertilize the earth with their presence. They churned it into a useless, toxic mire. Corn would not grow where the fairy pigs had walked for 7 years. They were the devourers of potential. They ate the future of the land. These precursors, the withering birds and the maddening pigs, served a distinct purpose in the grand narrative of the Ellén Trechend. They weakened the immune system of Ireland. Just as a body must be worn down by fever before the final fatal infection takes hold, the land of Connacht had to be exhausted by these lesser plagues. The forests were thinned. The soil was leached of its vitality. The people were weary, their nerves frayed by years of supernatural siege. The warriors were demoralized, having fought enemies they could not touch or count. And presiding over this carnival of horrors was the dark patroness of the cave itself. We cannot speak of Oweynagat without speaking of the Morrigan, the phantom queen, the goddess of battle, strife, and sovereignty. She is the presiding spirit of the cave. It is her fitful abode. While the Ellén Trechend is a beast, a mindless force of destruction, the Morrigan is the intellect behind the darkness. She uses the cave as a portal, a chariot path between the worlds. There is a specific myth, found in the Dinshenchus, that links her directly to the physical space of the cave and sets the scene for the monstrosities that follow. It is the story of Odrus. Odrus was a noblewoman, a keeper of cattle, who made the mistake of crossing the Morrigan. The goddess, seeking to assert her dominance, stole a bull from Odrus. But she did not just steal it. She let it down. She led the bull through the Oweynagat. Imagine the scene. The great goddess, perhaps in the guise of a crow or a terrifying woman in blood-red robes, leading the massive beast into the slit in the earth. Odrus, brave and foolish, followed them. She descended into the dark, into the damp limestone throat, chasing her property, chasing her livelihood. She never emerged. The texts say that the Morrigan turned her into a pool of water. She dissolved the woman into the landscape of the underworld. This is a profound metaphor for what the cave does. It liquefies reality. It takes the solid, the woman, the bull, the stone, and turns it into something fluid, something that flows and changes. This fluidity is the medium in which monsters like Ellén Trechend gestate. The Morrigan's presence in the cave suggests that the monsters are not accidental. They are not random mutations. They are, in some terrible way, authorized. They are the instruments of a harsh sovereignty. In the ancient Celtic mind, the gods were not always benevolent. They were powerful, and they demanded respect. If the land was being punished, it was because the relationship between the people and the other world had been violated. The monsters were the enforcers of a broken contract. By the time the Samhain of our story arrives, the Oweynagat is pulsating with accumulated power. The birds have come and gone, leaving the treetops bare. The pigs have churned the outlying fields into mud. The ghost of Odrus flows in the underground streams. The cave has been fed. It has been fed fear. It has been fed despair, and it has been fed the acceptance of the unnatural. The people of Connacht have become desensitized to horror. When the ground shakes, they do not assume it is an earthquake. They assume it is a new beast. When the wind howls, they do not check the shutters. They check their charms. They are a people living under a sword of Damocles, waiting for the string to snap. And on this night, the string snaps. The precursors were merely the tremors. Now comes the earthquake. The biological limits of the cave have been stretched. It is no longer producing flocks of small horrors or herds of confusing beasts. It has concentrated all its malice, all its toxicity, all its chaotic potential into a single organism. It has taken the aerial terror of the birds and forged the vulture head. It has taken the earthly ravaging of the pigs and forged the beast head. It has taken the fluid, poisonous nature of the Morrigan's underground streams and forged the snakehead. The Ellén Trechend is the synthesis of all the evils that came before it. It is the perfect storm of mythology. Let us return to the atmosphere of the land just moments before the emergence. The precursors have done their work. The ecosystem is silent. In a healthy forest, the night is full of sounds: the hoot of an owl, the rustle of a badger, the snap of a twig. But around Rathcroghan, the silence is absolute. It is a vacuum. The natural animals have long since fled or died. The vacuum is waiting to be filled. The air smells of ozone and sulfur, a scent that bypasses the nose and tastes like copper on the back of the tongue. The mist that rises from the ground is not the gentle white mist of the river valleys. It is a heavy, yellow-tinged fog that clings to the skin like a wet shroud. It is the Druid's mist, the Fith Fath, but corrupted. It hides the familiar landmarks, turning the known world into an alien landscape. A farmer, standing on the ramparts of a distant ring fort, looks out into this mist. He has survived the birds. He has survived the pigs. He thinks he has seen the worst the Sidhe can throw at him. He touches the iron knife at his belt, finding comfort in the cold metal. He tells himself that iron repels spirits. He tells himself that the walls are high. But he is wrong. Iron repels spirits, yes. But what is coming is not a spirit. It is a thing of heavy, physical flesh. It is a thing of bone and scale and muscle. It is a thing that can bleed, and therefore a thing that can kill with the weight of a falling mountain. The precursors were the spirits of the disease. The Ellén Trechend is the fever that burns the body to ash. The vibration in the ground intensifies. It is no longer a hum, it is a kick. The stones in the walls of the ring forts begin to rattle. The water in the buckets ripples, creating concentric circles that intersect in chaotic patterns. Deep in the limestone veins, the synthesis is complete. The incubation is over. The Oweynagat exhales. A blast of stale, pressurized air shoots out from the cave mouth, flattening the nettles, tearing the leaves from the thorn trees. It is a gust of wind that carries the scent of ancient blood, the blood of the cattle killed by the pigs, the blood of the forests killed by the birds. And then the claws hook onto the rim of the world. The ecology of doom has produced its masterpiece. The nightmare is no longer a concept. It is climbing out of the hole. As we move to witness the full birth and the rampage of this entity, remember the birds and the pigs. Remember that the land is already wounded. The Ellén Trechend is attacking a patient that is already on its knees. This is why the devastation will be so total. This is why the silence will be so profound. The stage is set. The lights are dimmed. The audience of terrified mortals is watching from behind barred doors, and the star of the tragedy is stepping into the spotlight. The beast has arrived. The birth of a god is often accompanied by light. The birth of a monster is accompanied by sound. We are back at the mouth of the Oweynagat. The pressure wave has passed, flattening the grass for a mile in every direction. The air is still vibrating, humming with the aftershock of the earth's exhalation. The darkness inside the cave is no longer empty. It is filled with a shifting, heaving mass that scrapes against the limestone walls with the sound of 1,000 knives being sharpened on whetstones. And then it emerges. The first thing to cross the threshold is a limb. It is not the paw of a wolf, nor the talon of a bird, nor the claw of a lizard. It is a grotesque amalgamation of all three. The foot is broad and flat, designed to distribute immense weight across the soft bogland. It is covered in scales that are not smooth like a fish, but rough and jagged like broken slate. Between the scales, thick, coarse hair sprouts, matted with the clay of the underworld. The claws are long, curved hooks of black keratin, digging deep into the soil of Rathcroghan, anchoring the beast as it pulls itself free from the womb of the earth. With a heave that shakes the burial mounds of the ancient kings, the Ellén Trechend drags its bulk into the open air. The size of it defies the logic of the waking world. Standing on the plain, it towers over the ancient thorn trees. Its body is a fortress of muscle and bone, shaped vaguely like the body of a massive bull, but elongated, twisting with a serpentine grace that contradicts its immense weight. Its hide is a patchwork of nightmares, feathers fused with fur, scales merging into thick, rhinoceros-like skin. It is the color of bruises, dark purples, sickly greens, and the gray of old ash. But the body is merely the carriage. The true horror lies in the heads. They rise from the massive shoulders on three distinct necks, swaying independently, seeking, tasting the air of the mortal world. The head on the left is the avian head. It is the vulture of the she. It sits on a long, sinewy neck covered in sparse, mange-ridden feathers. The beak is a terrifying instrument, a curved scimitar of yellow bone, stained with the fluids of the deep earth. Its eyes are set wide on its skull, beads of obsidian that reflect no light. This head twitches with a frantic, nervous energy. It scans the horizon. It scans the sky. It is the scout, the watcher, the aspect of the creature that commands the air. When it opens its beak, a sound emits that is not quite a screech, but the sound of wind whistling through a cracked skull. It is the sound of height and falling. The head on the right is the beast head. It is the wolf of the void. It is broad, heavy, and brutish. The neck is thick with muscle, covered in a mane of wire-stiff bristles that rattle when it moves. The jaws are short and powerful, filled with rows of teeth that are not designed for cutting, but for crushing. It has the ears of a bear, flat against the skull, listening to the tremors in the ground. Its eyes are small, red, and burning with a dull, hungry intelligence. This is the aspect of consumption. This is the head that eats the cattle, eats the walls, eats the very hope of the people. It drools a thick, viscous saliva that sizzles when it hits the frost-covered ground. And in the center, rising higher than the others, is the serpentine head, the dragon of the deep. It is the most alien of the three. The neck is long and flexible, coiling and uncoiling like a living rope. The head is triangular, flat, and devoid of emotion. It has no external ears. It has no fur or feathers, only cold, glistening scales the color of dead moss. The eyes are vertical slits of pale yellow, glowing with their own internal bioluminescence. From its mouth flicks a forked tongue, tasting the heat of the living. This head does not twitch like the bird or growl like the beast. It is silent. It waits. It is the strategist, the venomous core of the monster. Together, They form a trinity of destruction. They are the Ellén Trechend. The creature stands on the mound, silhouetted against the dark sky. It is a perversion of the natural order. In the Celtic world, everything has its place. Birds in the sky, beasts on the land, fish in the sea. This creature occupies all spaces and none. It is a violation of the boundaries. For a moment, it is still. The three heads look in 3 different directions. The bird looks west, towards the ocean. The beast looks south, towards the rich plains. The snake looks east, towards Tara, towards the seat of the High King. Then the rampage begins. It starts with a sound that has no name. The 3 heads vocalize at once. The screech, the roar, and the hiss combine into a shockwave that rolls across the plain of Mag-Ai. It is a physical blow. In the nearest settlement, a mile away, the thatched roofs of the roundhouses are blown off by the sheer acoustic force. The cattle in the fields drop dead of heart failure. The monster moves. Despite its size, it is terrifyingly fast. It does not plod. It surges. It moves with the momentum of a landslide. It descends from the mound of Rathcroghan and enters the cultivated lands. The destruction is not random. It is systematic. The creature seems offended by the marks of civilization. It reaches a stone wall, a boundary marker painstakingly built by generations of farmers to separate their fields. The beast head lowers. With a casual swing of its neck, it smashes through the stone. It does not just knock the wall down. It pulverizes the rock into gravel. It erases the boundary. It turns the ordered field back into open wilderness. It reaches a grove of apple trees, the pride of a local clan. The bird head strikes. It snaps the trunks like dry twigs. It tears the canopy apart, stripping the bark, leaving nothing but splintered wood. The orchard, which had stood for 50 years, is gone in 50 seconds. But the true horror is reserved for the living. The creature smells the warmth of a herd of cattle huddled in a valley. It descends upon them. The beast head does not eat to sate hunger. It eats to destroy. It tears through the herd, tossing carcasses into the air. The ground turns into a quagmire of mud and blood. The bird head pecks at the fleeing stragglers, blinding them, crippling them. The snakehead weaves through the carnage, breathing its pale mist. Where the mist touches, life simply ceases. There is no struggle. The grass turns black. The water in the trough turns to acid. The cattle that breathe the mist collapse, their bodies untouched but their spirits extinguished. This is the copper-red cloud mentioned in the prophecies, the breath of the Ellén Trechend. As the night wears on, the devastation widens. The creature is not just destroying a farm, it is destroying the landscape. It is reshaping the geography of Connacht. It digs its massive claws into the earth, tearing up deep furrows that will later become stagnant pools. It topples ancient standing stones, the markers of the ancestors, severing the link between the people and their history. The people of Connacht, huddled in their forts, hear the destruction. They hear the snapping of the great oaks. They hear the crumbling of stone. They feel the earth shaking with each step of the Titan. They do not dare to look out. To look is to attract the gaze of the vulture. To look is to invite the hunger of the wolf. In the darkness of the roundhouses, the storytellers whisper. They say that this is the return of the Fomorians, the ancient, chaotic gods of the sea, and the dark who were defeated by the Tuatha De Danann. They say that the earth is reclaiming its own. They say that the king has failed, and the land is vomiting up its displeasure. But the Ellén Trechend cares nothing for politics or history. It only cares for the void. It seeks to return the world to the state of Ginnungagap. Though that is a Norse word, the concept is universal. The primordial chaos, the silence before creation. By dawn, the landscape around Rathcroghan is unrecognizable. What was once a patchwork of green fields and golden stubble is now a wasteland of churned mud and broken timber. The silence is profound. There are no birds singing. There is no lowing of cattle. There is only the heavy, wet sound of the monster breathing, a sound like a bellows pumping in a flooded forge. The creature finds a place to rest. It does not hide in a cave. It has outgrown the dark. It lies down in the ruins of a chieftain's hall, crushing the throne beneath its belly. The three heads remain alert. The snake eyes never close. The vulture eyes scan the brightening sky, daring the sun to rise. This is the state of affairs when the news reaches the ears of the powerful. The creature is not a myth. It is a geographic fact. It is a new mountain on the horizon, a mountain that moves and eats. The impact on the society of ancient Ireland is catastrophic. The economy collapses overnight. Trade routes are severed because no traveler dares to cross the plain of Mag Ai. The tribute of cattle to the High King cannot be paid. The social order begins to fray. Refugees begin to stream out of Connacht. They carry what little they can on their backs, their eyes wide with the 1,000-yard stare of those who have seen the impossible. They tell stories of a hill that stood up and walked. They tell stories of a wind that smelled of the grave. They tell stories of 3 heads that argued in the language of the dead. "It ate the river," one man says, his voice trembling. "I saw it drink the Shannon dry and spit it out as poison." "It ate the wind," a woman says. "The bird head snapped at the air, and the breeze died." These are the exaggerations of trauma, but they speak to a deeper truth. The Ellén Trechend is consuming the elements. Earth, air, water. Only fire remains to be tested, and fire is what is needed. But who can wield fire against such a thing? The warriors of the Fianna are brave, but their spears are made of wood and bronze. They break against the scales of the beast. Several warbands try. The legends tell of a group of 50 young warriors, the flower of Connacht's nobility, who rode out to challenge the beast on the second day. They found it sleeping, or so they thought. They approached with stealth, intending to pierce the beast head's eyes. But the snake head was watching. It waited until they were within the kill zone. Then it hissed. The sound woke the other 2. The massacre lasted less than a minute. The vulture head plucked the riders from their horses. The beast head crushed the chariots. The snake head melted the bronze of their swords with its breath. 50 warriors, 50 sons of mothers, gone. Not a single bone left unbroken. After that, the attacks stopped. The people realized that military force was useless. This was not an enemy to be fought. It was a calamity to be endured. Like a flood or a famine, you do not fight it. You hide from it and pray it passes. But the Ellén Trechend does not pass. It settles. It claims the territory. It marks its boundaries with the acid of its breath and the blood of its victims. It becomes the new king of Connacht, a tyrant of chaos. It is in this absolute despair that the necessity for a different kind of hero arises. The sword has failed. The spear has failed. The shield has been crushed. The conventional methods of heroism, the brute force, the rage, the battle cry, are ineffective against a creature that is rage incarnate. To fight the three-headed one, you need someone who understands the number 3. You need someone who understands the synthesis of elements. You need a maker. You need a smith. And you need a poet. In the Celtic tradition, the smith, the gobhe, and the poet, the philid, are the two figures who stand outside the normal hierarchy. They manipulate the raw materials of the universe. The smith manipulates iron and fire. The poet manipulates words and truth. Amergin mac Ecit is both. While the monster sleeps on its throne of ruins, far away, in the smoke-filled forge of the eccentric genius Amergin, the hammer is ringing. He does not know the shape of the beast yet. He does not know the terror of the 3 heads, but he feels the disturbance in the iron. Iron, in folklore, is the metal of the earth. It feels the vibrations of the ground. Amergin's anvil is singing a different song today. It rings with a dull, heavy note. The metal he is working seems brittle, afraid. Amergin stops his work. He wipes the soot from his brow. He looks out the window of his forge towards the west. He sees the dark clouds gathering over Connacht. He feels the silence that is spreading like a stain across the map of Ireland. He knows that his time is coming. But let us not rush to the Savior yet. Let us linger a moment longer in the horror. Let us appreciate the magnitude of the problem. The Ellén Trechend has now begun to change the very climate of the region. The heat radiating from its massive body creates a microclimate of fog and dampness. Mold grows on everything. The walls of the remaining houses turn green with slime. The clothes of the refugees rot on their backs. The creature is terraforming Ireland into a replica of the Oweynagat. It is turning the upper world into the underworld. It is dragging the sunlit lands down into the damp, dark embrace of the Sídhe. The bird head shrieks at the sun, hating the light. The beast head howls at the moon, hating the tide. The snake head hisses at the wind, hating the movement. They want stillness. They want rot. They want the silence of the grave. This is the stakes of the battle to come. It is not just about killing a monster to save a few cows. It is about preventing the unmaking of creation. It is about stopping the encroaching void. The Cath Maige Mucrama, the battle of the Plain of the Pigs, is looming. But before the armies gather, before the kings make their plays for power, the monster stands alone, undisputed, a mountain of terror in the heart of the Emerald Isle. The birth is complete. The child of the cave has grown up, and it is hungry for more than just flesh. It is hungry for the sovereignty of Ireland itself. As the sun sets on another day of destruction, the Ellén Trechend lifts its 3 heads and sings its dissonant song to the stars. It is a challenge. It is a proclamation. I am here, it says in the language of monsters. I am the end." And in the silence that follows, only the rhythmic ringing of Amergin's hammer dares to answer. Clang, clang, clang. The iron is preparing to meet the flesh. The poet is preparing to meet the nightmare. While the province of Connacht dissolves into the mud of chaos, and while the three heads of the Ellén Trechend scream their dominance to the weeping sky, there is another sound in Ireland. It is not a scream. It is not a roar. It is a rhythmic, metallic heartbeat. Clang, hiss, clang, hiss. We must travel now away from the devastation of Rathcroghan, away from the poison mist, to the forge of Amergin mac Ecit. To understand the Savior, we must understand his trade. In the ancient Celtic world, the smith, the gobhe, was not merely a tradesman. He was not just a maker of horseshoes and nails. He was a liminal figure, a man who stood on the threshold between the natural and the supernatural. He took the bleeding ore of the earth, the red rocks of the bog, and through the application of fire and will, he transformed them into shiny, deadly, permanent things. He was a master of transmutation. In a society that feared magic, the smith was the one magician everyone needed. Amergin mac Ecit is a figure of immense complexity in the Ulster cycle and the cycle of kings. He is often overshadowed in popular summaries by the glittering heroes like Cruachan or Fionn mac Cumhail. But Amergin is different. He is the father of Connacht, one of the greatest warriors of the age. He is a man of the older generation, a man of grit, soot, and wisdom. He is described not as a golden-haired youth, but as a man etched by his work. Imagine him. His skin is leathery, tanned by the heat of the furnace, scarred by flying sparks and slipping chisels. His hands are massive, the fingers thick and permanently stained with charcoal and oil. He does not smell of rosewater or mead. He smells of sulfur, iron filings, and sweat. He is a man of the earth, but unlike the monster, he is the master of the earth, not its slave. But Amergin is not just a smith. He is a poet, a philid. In ancient Ireland, a poet was not a writer of gentle verses. A poet was a wielder of truth. A poet could bless a king with a eulogy and ensure his reign was prosperous, or he could curse a king with a satire, a glam dicen, and raise blisters on the king's face, causing his kingdom to crumble. The word and the weapon were twin edges of the same blade. Amergin represents the union of these two powers, the ability to shape metal and the ability to shape reality with words. On this particular week, while the Ellén Trechend is devouring the herds of the West, Amergin is in his forge. It is a dark, low-ceilinged building, built of stone to withstand the heat. The only light comes from the glowing heart of the furnace, and the occasional shower of orange sparks that erupts from the anvil. Amergin is working on something trivial, perhaps a linchpin for a chariot, or a rim for a wheel. But he stops. He feels it. As a smith, he is attuned to the vibrations of the land. He feels the tremors traveling through the bedrock, the deep, infrasound shudder of the monster's footsteps miles away. He feels the wrongness in the air. The fire in his forge sputters, turning a sickly blue for a moment. The iron on his anvil seems to grow cold faster than it should. A messenger arrives. He is a refugee, a man with haunted eyes, his cloak torn, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He stumbles into the warmth of the forge, bringing the cold mist of fear with him. "Amergin," the man cries. "It has come. The prophecy of the cave. The three-headed one. It is eating the world." Amergin does not look up immediately. He takes the tongs, places the cooling iron back into the coals, and works the bellows. Whoosh, whoosh. The fire roars back to life, white and hot. Only then does he turn to the man. "Describe it," Amergin says. His voice is deep, resonating in his chest like a bass drum. The man describes the horror, the vulture, the beast, the snake, the size of a hill, the breath that kills, the scales that turn spears. Amergin listens. He does not show fear. He shows professional interest. He is listening to the specifications of a problem. To a smith, a monster is just a flawed piece of existence that needs to be hammered back into shape or scrapped. "It has scales of copper and iron," Amergin asks. "Yes," the man weeps, "harder than any shield." "And it breathes poison." "Yes, the air dies around it." Amergin nods. He understands. This is not a beast that can be fought with a sword. A sword requires close combat, and the breath would kill you before you could strike. It is not a beast that can be fought with a wooden spear. The wood would rot in the poisonous air. It requires something else. It requires a weapon of absolute purity, a weapon of cold, hard, unyielding iron, thrown with the precision of a poet's insult. Amergin dismisses the man. "Go," he says. "Find shelter. I have work to do." He closes the heavy wooden doors of the forge. He bars them. He is alone with his fire and his tools. The preparation of Amergin is a ritual of elemental magic. He goes to his store of materials. He does not choose the imported steel, nor the bronze of the traders. He goes to a corner where he keeps the bog iron. These are nodules of iron ore harvested from the peat bogs of Ireland. They are gifts of the earth itself, formed by the slow chemical processes of the wetlands. They are alive in a way that mined ore is not. They have breathed the water and the soil of this island for centuries. He selects a massive lump of raw iron. It is heavy, ugly, and crusted with rust. It looks like a rock, but Amergin sees the potential inside. He places it in the furnace. He begins to pump the bellows. The rhythm of the work takes over. This is the meditation of the maker. As the heat rises, Amergin begins to chant. This is the Dan, the poem of making. He is not singing for an audience. He is singing to the metal. He is telling the iron what it must become. "Wake up," he chants. "Wake up from the sleep of the bog. Wake up from the cold mud. You are no longer earth. You are fire. You are will. You are the answer to the riddle." The iron glows red, then orange, then a blinding white. It becomes soft, pliable. Amergin takes it to the anvil. He lifts his hammer. It is a massive sledge, a tool that no ordinary man could lift with one hand, but Amergin wields it with an effortless grace. He strikes. Clang! The sound rings out, pure and clear. It is the sound of order striking chaos. Every blow is a syllable in a sentence of destruction. He folds the metal. He hammers it flat. He folds it again. He is compressing the grain of the iron, making it denser, harder, stronger. He is not making a sword. A sword is a slash. He is not making a spearhead in the traditional sense. He is making a bolt. A massive, heavy, aerodynamic slug of iron, pointed at both ends, balanced perfectly. It is a projectile designed to be thrown by a god-touched hand. He works for 3 days and 3 nights. He does not sleep. He does not eat. He is sustained by the fumes of the fire and the intensity of his purpose. The sweat pours off him, sizzling on the anvil, becoming steam that joins the atmosphere of the forge. During this time, he thinks of the enemy. He visualizes the Ellén Trechend. He deconstructs the monster in his mind. The vulture head is fast. He must be faster. The beast head is strong. He must be harder. The snake head is venomous. He must be pure. He works the Gaibolga technique into the iron, not the belly spear of Cruachan, but the principle of the death cast. He balances the weight so that when it flies, it will spin, drilling through the air, piercing the wind, ignoring the resistance of the atmosphere. As he works, he performs the imbas forosnai, the knowledge that enlightens. It is a sensory deprivation technique used by poets to see the future or the truth. He chews on the meat of the red pig, a ritual act, and chants over the anvil. He enters a trance state. In this trance, he sees the monster. He sees the weak point. Every monster has a flaw. The Ellén Trechend is a creature of 3 heads, but it has 1 heart. Or perhaps its flaw is its arrogance. It believes itself to be the only power in the world. It does not believe in the power of the made thing. It believes only in the power of the born thing. Amergin decides that the weapon must be a rotary champion. It must move. Finally, on the dawn of the 4th day, the weapon is ready. It sits on the anvil, cooling. It is dark gray, the color of a storm cloud. It is etched with Ogham runes along its length, runes of binding, runes of speed, runes of silence. It is ugly, brutal, and perfect. Amergin takes it in his hand. It is heavy, weighing perhaps as much as a young calf, but to him it feels light. It balances on 1 finger. It hums with a latent energy. He quenches it not in water, but in oil mixed with the juice of rowan berries, the tree of protection. The oil flares up, a brief column of fire, sealing the magic into the iron. Amergin dresses for war, but he does not put on the armor of a soldier. He does not wear the leather cuirass or the bronze helmet. He dresses as a smith. He wears his heavy leather apron, stained with the labor of his life. He wears thick woolen trousers and boots reinforced with iron plates. He leaves his head bare. Let the monster see the face of the man who kills it. Let it see the soot around his eyes, the gray in his beard, the lines of concentration on his forehead. He steps out of the forge. The air outside is foul. The precursors and the monster have done their work. The sky is a yellowish gray. The wind carries the stench of rotting meat. But Amergin breathes it in deep. He does not cough. He converts the disgust into fuel. He walks to his chariot. His charioteer, a loyal man named Gabran, is waiting, holding the reins of 2 black horses. The horses are nervous, skittish, smelling the predator on the wind. Amergin places a heavy hand on their necks. He whispers a horse whisper, a calming spell. The horses settle. They feel the authority of the master. Amergin climbs onto the chariot. He places the iron bolt in the rack beside him. He does not take a shield. A shield is for a man who plans to be hit. Amergin does not plan to be hit. "Where to, master?" Gabran asks, his voice tight. "To Maige Mucrama," Amergin says. "To the plain of pigs. That is where it will be." Amergin looks at the destruction, and his heart hardens. This is not just violence. It is an insult to craftsmanship. A farm is a made thing. A house is a made thing. A wall is a made thing. This monster is an unmaker. It is the enemy of civilization. As they draw closer to the plain of Maige Mucrama, the environment changes. The ground becomes soft, churned into mud by the massive weight of the beast. The air becomes warmer, humid with the monster's body heat, and then they hear it. The dissonant chord, the screech, howl, hiss. It is loud. It vibrates in the marrow of their bones. The horses rear, terrified. Gabran struggles to hold them. "Steady," Amergin commands. "Drive on." They crest a ridge, and there it is. The Ellén Trechend. It is even bigger than the messenger described. It occupies the center of the plain like a grotesque castle. It is feeding on the carcasses of a slaughtered herd. The vulture head is tearing at flesh. The beast head is crunching bones. The snake head is watching the horizon. The snake head sees them. It stops moving. It rises high, 20 feet into the air. The yellow slit eyes fix upon the tiny chariot on the ridge. It hisses. The other two heads snap to attention. The vulture screams. The beast roars. The monster turns. The ground shakes as it shifts its bulk. It begins to move towards them. It is not running. It is flowing. A massive tide of scales and muscle. Gabran pulls on the reins. "Master, it is too big. We cannot fight this." Amergin stands firm in the chariot. He looks at the monster. He does not see a god. He does not see a demon. He sees a target. He reaches down and picks up the iron bolt. He weighs it in his hand. He feels the balance. He feels the heat of the forge still trapped inside the core of the metal. "Turn the chariot," Amergin says calmly. "Drive parallel to it. Keep your distance, but give me a clear line of sight." "But the breath!" Gabran screams. "The poison!" "The wind is from the north," Amergin says, wetting a finger. "Keep us upwind. Drive!" The chariot bursts into motion. They race across the ridge, the wheels bouncing on the uneven turf. The monster changes course to intercept them. It is surprisingly fast, closing the distance with terrifying speed. The vulture head snaps forward, its beak clacking shut just feet behind the chariot wheels. The wind of the snap nearly knocks Amergin off his feet. The beast head lowers, preparing to ram the chariot, to crush it into splinters. Amergin spreads his legs, planting his iron-shod boots on the floorboards of the chariot. He is the stillness in the center of the motion. He is the anvil. He raises the iron bolt. He draws his arm back. His muscles, honed by 50 years of swinging a sledgehammer, bulge like cables. He takes a breath. He holds it. He waits for the moment of alignment. He waits for the imbas, the flash of insight. He is not just throwing a piece of metal. He is throwing his entire life. He is throwing the history of his ancestors. He is throwing the concept of the smith against the concept of the monster. The snakehead lunges. It opens its mouth to spray the venom. Amergin sees the pink, soft tissue inside the throat of the serpent. He sees the pathway to the heart of the beast. He releases. The iron bolt flies. It does not fly like a spear. It flies like a thunderbolt. It spins. It hums. It tears the air apart. But we must pause here. The bolt is in the air. The monster is lunging. The hero is standing with his arm extended, the smoke of the release curling from his fingers. The confrontation has begun. The politics of the land, the gathering of the armies, the context of why this battle is happening at Maige Mucrama. All of this hangs in the balance of this single cast. But Amergin is not alone in this war. While he is the champion, there are other forces at play. The kings of Ireland are watching. The Sídhe are watching. The land itself is holding its breath. The iron bolt is in the air. It hangs there, suspended in the amber of our narrative, a dark gray blur spinning against the backdrop of a poisoned sky. Ahead of it lies the gaping maw of the Ellén Trechend, the throat of the abyss. Behind it stands Amergin, the smith-poet, his arm still extended, his soul poured into the metal. But before we hear the impact, before we witness the collision of the made thing and the born thing, we must freeze this moment. We must pull our gaze away from the duel on the ridge and look at the wider horizon. We must understand why this battle is happening here, on the plain of Maige Mucrama, and why the fate of Ireland hangs on the trajectory of that single piece of bog iron. For in the Celtic world, a monster is never just a monster. It is a symptom. The Ellén Trechend did not rise from the Oweynagat simply because the cave was full. It rose because the fear Flaithamon, the truth of the ruler, was faltering. It rose because the political soul of Ireland was fractured. To understand this, we must look to the camps of the armies that are gathering on the edges of this cursed plain. While Amergin fights the physical manifestation of chaos, two great human hosts are preparing to fight for the right to define order. On one side we have Art Mac Quinn, the High King of Ireland, the son of Conn the 100 Fighter. He is a figure of immense, tragic dignity. The legends describe him not as a bloodthirsty warrior, but as a melancholy king, a man who knows he is walking towards his own doom. He sits in his tent, surrounded by the flickering light of oil lamps. He is the Art the Lonely, so named because he is the last of his line, his brothers having fallen to the intrigue of the world. Art represents the old order. He represents the legitimacy of the Tara kingship, but his reign is troubled. The harvest has been poor, even before the monster came. The wolves have been bold, and now this creature from the underworld has emerged in his vassal state of Connacht. To the ancient Irish mind, this is not bad luck. It is a cosmic indictment. If the king is perfect, the land is perfect. If the land breeds three-headed monsters, the king is flawed. Art knows this. He feels the weight of the Ellén Trechend, not as a physical threat, but as a stain on his honor. He cannot defeat it himself. Kings are bound by geis, by taboos, that often prevent them from engaging in certain combats, so he relies on the champions of the land. He relies on men like Amergin. Opposing him, waiting in the shadows of the southern hills, is the challenger, Lugad mac Con. Lugad is the exile. He was driven from Ireland years ago, forced to flee across the sea to Alba, Scotland, and Britain. He has returned not as a penitent son, but as a conqueror. He brings with him a foreign army, Britons, Saxons, mercenaries with strange accents and strange gods. He is the wolf son. He represents the disruption, the new energy, but also the danger of foreign influence. Lugod watches the devastation of the Ellén Trechend from afar. To him, the monster is a weapon. It is the chaos that destabilizes the reign of Art Mac Quinn. Every farm the monster destroys is a blow to Art's legitimacy. Every day the monster lives is proof that Art cannot protect his people. This is the gathering storm. The Battle of Maige Mucrama is not just a clash of swords, it is a clash of realities. And the Ellén Trechend stands right in the center of it, the chaotic pivot point upon which the history of Ireland will turn. The location itself is significant. Maige Mucrama, the plain of the counting of pigs. We spoke earlier of the magic pigs that emerged from the cave, the ones that could not be counted. This plain is named after them. It is a place where reality is historically thin. It is a place where numbers fail, where logic dissolves. It is the natural arena for a creature like the Ellén Trechend. Imagine the atmosphere in the camps of the High King on this twilight eve. The soldiers are silent. These are the men of the Fianna, the elite warriors, usually boisterous and eager for glory. But tonight, they are quiet. They polish their shields with slow, rhythmic motions. They sharpen their swords, the sound of the whetstones rasping like dry breaths in the damp air. They know that Amergin has gone out. They know the smith has ridden to face the beast. If the smith fails, one warrior whispers to another, then the king falls. If the smith fails, the other replies, there will be no king left to fall. The three heads will eat Tara itself. The dread is palpable. It is a heavy, physical weight, like a wet wool cloak draped over the shoulders of the army. The horses are restless, sensing the predator miles away. The druids chant protective circles around the campfires, casting salt and rowan berries into the flames to keep the bad wind at bay. Art Mac Quinn steps out of his tent. He looks towards the west, towards the ridge where Amergin's chariot is racing. He cannot see the details. It is too far, and the mist is too thick. But he can see the flashes of light, the unnatural, bioluminescent glow of the snakehead, the sudden, jerky movements of the vulture head. He prays. He prays not to the Christian God, for this is the time before Patrick, but to the old gods, the Tuatha De Danann. He prays to Nuada of the Silver Hand. He prays to the Dagda. But the old gods are distant. They have retreated into the hollow hills. The age of men is ending, and the age of monsters seems to be returning. Meanwhile, in the camp of Lugod Mac Con, the mood is different. It is predatory. Lugod walks among his foreign mercenaries. He sees the fear in their eyes. They have never seen a monster like this in Britain, but he twists it into anger. See, Lugod says, pointing to the devastation. See what the rule of Art has brought. The earth rejects him. The earth vomits up demons to spite him. When I am king, the caves will be sealed. When I am king, order will return. It is a seductive lie. The usurper always promises that he can control the chaos that the rightful king cannot. But deep down, Lugod fears the beast too. He knows that if Amergin fails, if the monster is left unchecked, there will be no kingdom for him to conquer. He is betting everything on the smith, even as he plots to overthrow the smith's master. This is the complexity of the politics of Maige Mucrama. Everyone, friend and foe alike, is paralyzed by the presence of the Ellén Trechend. The human war is paused. The dynastic struggle is suspended. All eyes are fixed on the duel. Let us look deeper into the geis, the sacred taboos that bind these figures. Amergin, as a poet and a smith, has a geis against unmade things. He cannot abide chaos. It is his spiritual duty to hammer the world into shape. This is why he had to go. He could not sit in his forge while the unmade thing roamed free. It was a compulsion of his soul. Art MacQuinn has a geis against turning back. He cannot retreat from a battle once the challenge is issued. Even though he knows the monster is beyond him, he could not flee Connacht. He had to stay, to witness, to hold the line until his champion arrived. And the Ellén Trechend? Does a monster have a geis? Perhaps its geis is silence. It cannot abide the noise of civilization. It cannot abide the ringing of the bell, the blow of the hammer, the song of the bard. It is driven to extinguish sound. This is why it attacks Amergin. Amergin is the loudest thing in the world. He is the clang of the anvil and the voice of the poem. He is the antithesis of the creature's desire for the void. The wind shifts on the plain. The mist clears for a fleeting second, revealing the tableau on the ridge. The soldiers in the valley see it. They see the massive, dark bulk of the monster, its 3 heads weaving a pattern of death in the air. They see the tiny speck that is the chariot, and they see the smith standing tall, his arm extended, the smoke of the release fading. Time is a strange thing in mythology. It stretches and compresses. The flight of the iron bolt takes only a second in physical time, but in narrative time, it takes an eternity. It carries with it the hopes of the High King, the ambitions of the usurper, the prayers of the refugees, and the pride of the craftsman. If the bolt misses, the Ellén Trechend will destroy Amergin. Then it will descend into the valley. It will scatter the armies of Art and Lugod like leaves in a storm. It will march east. It will tear down the timber halls of Tara. It will nest in the ruins of the kingship. Ireland will become a wolf land, a land of shadows and bones. If the bolt hits, well, that is the question. Can a made thing kill a born nightmare? Can the iron of the bog, shaped by human will, penetrate the hide of the underworld? The Druids of Art MacQuinn begin a chant. It is a low, rhythmic drone, adored fian. They are lending their spiritual weight to the iron. They are singing the song of true aim. Fly true, son of the earth, they chant. Fly true, hammer-born, find the heart of the void. Find the silence and break it. On the other side, the sorcerers of Lugod Macon are silent. They watch with bated breath. They want the monster dead, yes, but they fear the power of the man who can kill it. If Amergin slays the beast, his legend will grow. He will become the kingmaker. His support for Art MacQuinn will be unassailable. So, even in this moment of shared peril, there is division. The arrow flies through a web of conflicting desires. The landscape itself seems to hold its breath. The plain of Maige Mucrama, scarred and muddy, waits for the verdict. This ground has seen slaughter before. It has seen the magical pigs counted and recounted, but it has never seen a confrontation like this. The bolt is spinning. The rotational force Amergin imparted to it creates a vacuum around the metal. It screams as it flies. It is a sound that cuts through the dissonance of the monster. It is a pure, clear note of aggressive geometry. The snakehead hears it. The yellow eyes widen. For the first time since it crawled out of the Oweynagat, the Ellén Trechend feels something akin to fear. It recognizes the sound. It is the sound of the forge. It is the sound of fire that has been tamed and weaponized. The monster tries to react. The vulture head snaps at the projectile, trying to intercept it mid-air. The beast head lowers, trying to present the thick bone of its forehead as a shield. The snake head coils back, preparing to strike. But the bolt is too fast. It was made with the imbas, the foresight. Amergin aimed not at where the monster was, but where it would be. The bolt passes the snapping beak of the vulture. It passes the guarding bone of the beast. It flies straight into the open, hissing maw of the serpent. But we are not there yet. We are watching from the camps. We see the flash. We hear the impact, a sound like a thunderclap trapped in a box. And then the reaction. The armies of Art MacQuinn let out a shout. It is a spontaneous, primal release of tension. They do not know the outcome yet, but they saw the strike. They saw the defiance. In the camp of Lugard, the wolf son tightens his grip on his sword. He knows the game has changed. The board has been flipped. The politics of the land are suspended. The focus snaps back to the physical reality of the duel. The gathering storm has broken. The rain begins to fall, a cold, hard rain that mixes with the mist. We must now leave the camps. We must leave the kings and their ambitions. We must rush back to the ridge. We must return to the mud and the blood. We must witness the death throes of a mountain. Because hitting the monster is one thing. Killing it is another. The Ellén Trechend is a creature of the Sídhe. It does not die easily. It does not follow the biological rules of mortality. To kill it, Amergin will have to do more than just pierce its heart. He will have to dismantle it. He will have to finish the poem he started in the forge. The bolt has struck. The silence is broken. And now, the real battle begins. The pause ends. The universe exhales. The iron bolt, the rotary champion, forged in the darkness of Amergin's smithy, crosses the final threshold of space. It enters the open, hissing mouth of the serpentine head. It does not stop at the teeth. It does not stop at the throat. It carries the momentum of the forge, the weight of the bog, and the will of the poet. It punches through the soft, pink tissue of the gullet. It shatters the vertebrae of the neck. It exits through the back of the scales in a spray of black, viscous fluid that is not quite blood and not quite smoke. The impact is sickeningly wet, a sound like a heavy stone dropped into deep mud. For a heartbeat, the Ellén Trechend does not react. The nervous system of such a titan is vast and slow. The signal of death has to travel from the severed spine of the central head down to the massive heart buried in the chest cavity. Then the pain arrives. The snakehead, the strategist, the cold intellect, the eyes of the void, goes limp. It drops like a cut rope, crashing against the shoulder of the beast. The light in the yellow eyes flickers and dies. The bioluminescence fades, leaving a trail of gray smoke. But the monster is not dead. It is merely lobotomized. And a monster without a mind is a far more dangerous thing than a monster with a plan. The other two heads, the vulture and the beast, realize that the central command is gone. They realize that the self is broken. They react with pure, unadulterated panic. The vulture head shrieks, a sound so high and piercing that Amergin feels blood trickle from his own ears. It flaps its wings, vestigial, massive limbs hidden along the flanks, trying to lift the bulk of the creature into the air. It wants to flee to the safety of the clouds. The beast head roars, a sound of deep, tectonic rage. It wants to dig. It wants to charge. It wants to destroy the source of the pain. The conflicting impulses tear the Ellén Trechend apart from the inside. One head pulls up, the other pulls down. The massive body lurches, stumbling sideways, crashing into the ridge with the force of an avalanche. The ground shakes so violently that Gabran, the charioteer, is thrown to his knees, clinging to the rail of the chariot. Amergin does not stumble. He stands wide-legged, riding the earthquake. He watches the chaos he has unleashed. He sees the snakehead dragging on the ground, useless. He sees the vulture and the beast fighting for control of the limbs. "It is confused," Amergin says, his voice cutting through the noise. "The rhyme is broken. Now we finish the stanza." He taps Gabran on the shoulder. "Drive in. Close the distance." "In," Gabran screams, looking at the thrashing mountain of scales. "It will crush us." "It cannot see us," Amergin replies. "The snake was the eyes. The bird looks only at the sky. The beast looks only at the mud. We are in the blind spot. Drive." The chariot surges forward. They enter the kill zone, the area of churned mud and broken stone directly around the monster. The smell is overpowering, a mix of ozone, musk, and the copper tang of the black blood spraying from the severed neck. The Ellén Trechend is thrashing blindly. Giant claws tear up the earth, sending geysers of soil into the air. The tail whips around, snapping trees like matches. Amergin guides the chariot through the debris, weaving a path through the storm of limbs. He is not using a bow. He is not using a spear. He reaches down and picks up a second weapon. It is a hammer. Not the sledgehammer of the forge, but a war hammer. Short-handled, heavy-headed, balanced for a single-handed strike. It is iron, pure and simple. No runes, no magic. Just wait. "Bring me to the leg," Amergin commands. Gabran steers the terrified horses towards the massive left foreleg of the beast. It is like driving towards a pillar of a moving temple. The leg is covered in those thick, slate-like scales. Amergin waits. He watches the rhythm of the thrashing. He waits for the leg to plant, to bear the weight of the beast as it tries to turn. "Now!" The chariot sweeps past the leg. Amergin leans out. He swings the hammer. Crack! He strikes the knee joint. He does not try to cut the flesh. He breaks the structure. The sound of the giant bone snapping is louder than the roar. It is a dry, percussive report that echoes off the hills. The leg buckles. The Ellén Trechend loses its structural integrity. It collapses onto its side, the impact sending a shockwave of mud washing over the chariot wheels. The vulture head is now at ground level. It is thrashing in the mud, its beak snapping wildly, biting at the earth, biting at its own shoulder. It sees the chariot now. The obsidian eyes lock onto Amergin. It lunges. It is fast, faster than a creature that size has any right to be. The beak opens, a cavern of yellow bone, ready to swallow the chariot whole. Amergin does not flinch. He is a poet. He knows the power of the voice. He drops the hammer. He stands tall. He fills his lungs with the air of the battlefield. And he speaks. He casts a glam d'chen, a satire of the face. "Carrion bird!" he roars, his voice amplified by the magic of his cast. "Featherless thief! Scavenger of the dead! You have no prey here. You are the prey. The worm eats the bird. The earth eats the sky." It is a psychological assault. In the magical logic of the Celtic world, to be named is to be owned. To be insulted by a master poet is to be physically weakened. The vulture head hesitates. It flinches from the words as if they were physical blows. The magic of the satire burns its mind. It is confused. Is it the predator, or is it the worm? In that moment of hesitation, Amergin acts. He grabs a spear from the rack, a heavy, ash-wood spear tipped with broad iron. He leaps from the chariot. He lands on the neck of the fallen beast. The scales are slippery with slime, but his iron-shod boots find purchase. He runs up the heaving flank of the monster, towards the junction of the necks. The vulture head recovers. It shrieks and snaps at him. Amergin dives, rolling under the sweep of the beak. He thrusts the spear upward. He drives it into the soft, unarmored skin beneath the jaw of the bird. He puts his entire weight behind it, driving the shaft deep into the skull, pinning the vulture head to its own chest. The bird spasms. It beats its wings one last time, creating a hurricane of wind that nearly blows Amergin off the carcass. Then it falls still. The black eyes glaze over. 2 heads down, 1 to go. The beast head, the wolf. This is the most dangerous one. It is the head of pure, unthinking violence. It does not care about strategy. It does not care about poetry. It only cares about pain. And it is in agony. Amergin stands on the chest of the monster, between the limp snake and the dead bird. He looks at the beast head. It is thrashing, trying to bite the iron bolt that is still lodged in the neck of its brother snake, trying to chew the pain away. It smells Amergin. It stops thrashing. It turns its massive, furry head. The red eyes burn with a hate that is older than the world. It growls, a low, vibrating frequency that rattles Amergin's teeth. Amergin has no weapons left. He left the hammer in the chariot. The spear is pinned in the bird. He stands on the mountain of flesh, armed only with his hands and his will. But Amergin is a smith, and a smith is never unarmed as long as there is fire. He reaches into his belt. He pulls out a small, sealed clay pot. It is the same pot he used to quench the bolt. It contains the oil of the rowan berry and the fire of the forge, a chemical mixture known only to the masters of the guild. The beast head lunges. The jaws open wide enough to crush a boulder. Amergin can smell the rot of its breath, the stench of the thousands of cattle it has eaten. Amergin does not run away. He runs towards it. He sprints along the heaving rib cage of the monster. As the jaws snap shut, he slides. He slides right under the chin of the wolf head, narrowly missing the rows of crushing teeth. He smashes the clay pot against the coarse fur of the monster's throat. The oil splashes out, soaking the mane, soaking the dry bristles. Amergin reaches into his pouch and pulls out his flint and steel. He strikes them. A spark. Whoosh. The oil catches. The mane of the beast head, dry and matted with grease, erupts into a crown of flame. The beast head screams. Fire is the one thing the creatures of the earth fear above all else. It is the element of transformation, the element of the smith. The fire spreads rapidly, consuming the fur, blinding the red eyes with smoke. The monster panics. It forgets Amergin. It forgets the battle. It only knows the heat. It thrashes, bashing its own head against the ground, trying to put out the fire. But the rowan oil burns hot and clings like pitch. Amergin jumps off the monster. He lands in the mud, rolling to safety. He stands up, breathing hard, watching the pyre. The Ellén Trechend is dying. The snake is brain dead. The bird is pierced. The beast is burning. But a monster of this magnitude does not die quietly. It begins to convulse. The death throes are a geological event. The tail lashes out, cracking the bedrock. The claws tear trenches in the plain that will remain for centuries. The black blood pours from the wounds, filling the hollows, creating a lake of darkness. Amergin signals to Cruachan. The chariot circles back. Amergin climbs in. "Is it done?" Cruachan asks, his face pale as milk. "Not yet," Amergin says. "We must witness the end. A thing is not made until it is finished. A life is not taken until the breath stops." They wait. They watch. The thrashing slows. The roars turn into whimpers, then into wet, gurgling breaths. The fire on the beast head burns down to embers. The massive chest cavity heaves once, twice, a third time, and then stops. The silence returns. But it is not the terrified silence of the arrival. It is the heavy, final silence of death. The wind begins to blow again, no longer afraid of the monster's hiss. The mist begins to lift. Amergin steps down from the chariot. He walks to the corpse. It is immense. Up close, it looks less like an animal and more like a ruined fortification. The scales are cooling, losing their metallic sheen and turning to the dull gray of stone. The magic is leaving the flesh. It is becoming just matter. Amergin walks to the snakehead. He finds the iron bolt buried deep in the neck. He places his boot on the scales and pulls. It takes all his strength, but the bolt slides out with a wet, sucking sound. He holds it up. It is stained black, corroded by the venom, but it is still whole. The iron held. He looks at the Oweynagat in the distance. The cave mouth is dark, silent. The connection is broken. The precursors are gone. The king is dead. Amergin does not cheer. He does not raise his arms in victory. He feels a profound sadness. He is a maker, and he has just unmade a masterpiece of nature. Even if it was a nightmare, It was a magnificent nightmare. He touches the side of the beast. "Sleep now," he whispers. "Go back to the mud. Go back to the root. Do not wake again." This is the mercy of the poet. He grants the monster a eulogy. He closes the narrative loop. Far away, on the edges of the plain, the armies of Art Mac Cuin and Lugad Mac Con are watching. They see the fire die down. They see the mountain stop moving. They see the tiny figure of the smith standing alone in the center of the carnage. A cheer goes up from the High King's camp. It starts low, a rumble of relief, and grows into a roar that rivals the monster's own voice. Shields are beaten. Swords are clashed. The king has been vindicated. The land has been saved. But Amergin does not look at them. He is looking at his hands. They are shaking. The adrenaline is fading, leaving behind the exhaustion of the mortal man who wrestled with a god. He climbs back into the chariot. "Take me home, Gabran," he says softly. "I have a fire to tend, and this iron needs to be melted down. It has tasted too much poison." They ride away, leaving the carcass of the Ellén Trechend to the carrion birds, the natural birds, the crows and the ravens that are already circling, reclaiming the sky that was stolen from them. The battle is over. The duel at the gate is won. But the story of the Ellén Trechend does not end with its death. In mythology, the death of a monster is often just the planting of a seed. The body remains. The memory remains. And the cave is still there. The battle is over. The monster is dead. But in the ancient world, nothing simply ends. Everything echoes. We stand now in the aftermath. The plain of Maige Mucrama is quiet. The great armies of the High King Art and the usurper Lugad have retreated to their camps, sobered by the spectacle of the duel. The only sound is the wind whistling through the hollow bones of the vulture head, a mournful flute playing a dirge for the end of an age. The carcass of the Ellén Trechend lies like a fallen mountain range in the center of the mud. It is a problem of geography as much as biology. What do you do with a corpse the size of a fortress? You cannot bury it. There are not enough spades in all of Ireland to dig a grave deep enough. You cannot burn it. The fires of the beast head have consumed the fuel, and the smoke would poison the clouds for a generation. So, the people do what they have always done with the inexplicable remnants of the gods. They let the land claim it. Over the coming weeks and months, the body of the Ellén Trechend undergoes a transformation. It ceases to be a monster and begins to become a landscape. The massive rib cage, stripped of flesh by the carrion birds and the wolves that eventually return to the plain, settles into the earth. The bones are so large, so white and arching, that moss begins to grow on them. They become the druim, the ridges of the plain. The black blood that pooled in the trenches dug by the dying claws does not dry up. It sinks into the water table. It mixes with the peat. It creates the dúth linn, the black pools, dark, stagnant bodies of water where no fish swim and where the reflection of the moon always looks distorted. The locals learn to avoid these pools. They say that if you drink from them, you will dream of three heads arguing in the dark. The scales of the monster, those plates of copper and iron and stone, fall away one by one. They are scattered across the fields of Rathcroghan. Farmers, finding them centuries later, will call them giant's coins or devil's shingles. They are plowed into the earth, returning the metal of the underworld back to the soil, perhaps to be mined again in 1,000 years by another smith for another war. But what of the creator of this silence? What of Amergin? The legends are quiet about his triumph. There are no great parades for the smith. In the Celtic tradition, the slayer of monsters often takes on a portion of the monster's pollution. By touching the beast, by entering its orbit, Amergin has been tainted. He is eerie. He is too powerful to be comfortable around. He returns to his forge. He melts down the iron bolt, as he promised. He destroys the weapon that saved the world, because a weapon that kills a god is too dangerous to exist. He goes back to making horseshoes. He goes back to making nails. But the people say that his poetry changed. It became darker. It became more rhythmic, like the breathing of a sleeping beast. He lived out his days in the glow of his furnace, the guardian of the memory, the man who looked into the abyss and hammered it shut. And then there is the cave, the Oweynagat. The throat of the earth is empty now. The pressure is gone, but it is still open. It is still a wound. The druids of Connacht, the wise men who failed to stop the birth, now gather to ensure there is no second coming. They perform a ritual of sealing. They do not use stone and mortar, for stone can be broken. They use magic. They weave a caim, a circle of protection, around the entrance. They plant rowan trees, the same wood Amergin used to burn the beast, in a ring around the lintel. The roots of the rowan are said to knot themselves into a net that holds the spirits back. They carve the Ogham script deeper into the lintel stone. Vraichi maki medvi. They renew the warning. They turn the cave from a gateway into a tomb. For centuries, the Oweynagat is avoided. It becomes a place of superstition. Children are told not to play near the cat's cave. Shepherds count their flocks twice when they pass the mound of Rathcroghan. The memory of the Ellén Trechend fades from terrifying history into the mist of folklore. But history has a way of repeating itself, or at least rhyming. The death of the monster was not the end of the violence at Maige Mucrama. Scholars suggest that the Ellén Trechend was a mythological metaphor for this war. The three heads represented the three forces tearing Ireland apart: the foreign invaders, Lugod's army; the internal strife, the rebel lords; and the wrath of the land, the famine. Amergin's victory was the desperate attempt of the culture to impose order on a world that was falling apart. But let us move forward in time. Let us walk through the centuries. The Iron Age gives way to the early Christian period. The monks arrive. They bring with them new books, new bells, and a new god. They look at the ancient mounds of Rathcroghan. They hear the stories of the three-headed beast, and they write them down. This is the great irony of Irish mythology. It was preserved by the very people who sought to replace it. The monks in their scriptoretums, working by candlelight, listened to the Philid. They wrote the Cath Maige Mucrama. They preserved the name of Amergin, but they changed it slightly. They Christianized it. They made the monster a demon. They made the cave a literal hell. The Hell's Gate of Ireland became a place where saints would go to do battle with Satan. The complexity of the Celtic other world, which was neither good nor evil, just other, was flattened into a simple binary of good versus evil. Yet, through the ink and the parchment, the original terror still breathes. When you read the Labor Gabala Eren, you can still feel the heat of the beast head's fire. You can still hear the hiss of the snake. The pagan heart of the story beats beneath the Christian skin. And what of today? If you travel to County Roscommon now, in the 21st century, you can walk the fields of Rathcroghan. It is a quiet place. The visitor center is polite and educational. There are maps and guidebooks. But if you leave the paved road, if you walk out into the wet fields past the grazing sheep, you can find it. The Oweynagat is still there. It is hidden in a tangle of scrub and trees, just a dark slit in the earth under a heavy lintel stone. It looks small. It looks innocuous. You have to crouch to enter it. It is muddy, wet, and tight. But those who crawl inside, the modern cavers, the archaeologists, the seekers of myth, report a strange sensation. They speak of the acoustic silence of the cave. When you are deep inside, the world above ceases to exist. There is no sound of cars, no sound of wind, just the drip, drip, drip of the limestone. And sometimes, they say, there is a smell, a faint metallic tang, like old copper, like dried blood. They say that the temperature drops suddenly. They say that the shadows seem to have weight. It is a reminder that the mythology of Ireland is not a dead thing in a museum. It is written in the geography. The Ellén Trechend is not gone. It is dissolved into the landscape. It is the landscape. The story of the three-headed monster serves as a triad of wisdom for us, the listeners. First, it teaches us about the fragility of order. Civilization, the walls, the fields, the laws, is a thin veneer over the chaos of nature. All it takes is one bad winter, one plague, one monster from the deep, and the walls come tumbling down. We must respect the wild, for it is always waiting at the gate. Second, it teaches us about the power of the Maker. Amergin did not win because he was the strongest. He won because he was the smartest. He won because he used his craft. He forged a solution. In a world of destruction, the act of creation, whether it is forging a bolt or writing a poem, is the ultimate act of rebellion. Third, it teaches us about the necessity of shadow. The Oweynagat is not evil. It is necessary. It is the subconscious of the land. Without the underworld, there is no upper world. Without the winter, there is no spring. The monster is part of the cycle. It clears the way for the new. As we sit here by our virtual hearth, the fire burning low, let us remember the image of Amergin standing on the ridge, the lone man against the mountain. It is the eternal image of the human condition. We are all Amergin. We all face our monsters, be they illness, grief, or fear. They may seem invincible. They may have 3 heads and breathe poison. They may threaten to swallow our world. But we have our anvils. We have our hammers. We have the iron of our will and the fire of our spirit. And like the smith of Connacht, we can forge a way through. The storm has passed. The sky over Rathcroghan is clear. The stars are out. The same stars that looked down on the slaughter of the Maige Mucrama. The plough, the hunter, the dragon. They watch us, indifferent and beautiful. The Ellén Trechend sleeps in the earth. The Oweynagat holds its breath. And the story is safe in your keeping. Thank you for listening to this journey into the deep time of Celtic myth. It has been a long road, from the birth in the dark to the fire on the plain. I hope the shadows did not press too close, and that you found some warmth in the forge of Amergin. If you found value in this saga, if you enjoyed walking the mist-shrouded paths of ancient Ireland with me, please consider leaving a like on this video. It helps the channel grow, and it helps us keep the fires burning against the dark. Subscribe to Hearths of Myths for more deep dives into the lore of the ancients. We have many more caves to explore, many more heroes to meet, and many more monsters to face. But for now, the tale is done. The book is closed. Rest well. Dream of green fields and high stone walls. And if you hear a scratching at the door, it is only the wind. Good night.